Hello, Formula One fans, and welcome to Fans Forum, the show where we put you in pole position, driving the conversation as myself and my VIP co-host cover all the action from another Grand Prix weekend. This time, all our eyes were on Hungary, of course, but it's not just about me and my guest host. It's also about you guys. So we want your chat, your comments in the box. Let us know what you thought of all the action this weekend, as Lady Luck definitely played her role. Gracing Charles Leclerc with pole position, and then potentially also as well gracing Lando Norris with the race win. Although Oscar Piastri still tops up the Drivers' Championship just about as we go into the summer break. We'll be getting into all that and more with my VIP co-host. And today we have got a man who is very much on a mission. At the beginning of this 2025 season, he set himself the challenge of attending every Grand Prix race on a budget of £20,000, and with only 28 days annual leave across the year. It is, of course, Brandon from Full Time Formula. Brandon, it's great to have you on the show tonight.
Thanks so much, James. Yeah, it's great to be here. It's my first time being on like a live show and a podcast since I've started doing my challenge. So thanks for inviting me on. This is awesome.
Well, Bud, I've got to say it's testament to the moves that you're making and the impact that you're having across the Formula One community and pop culture, etc. You know what I mean? People are following your journey, and you're giving a great insight into all the locations across the calendar as well. What's it been like the first half of the season for you, and what was the weekend like this weekend in Hungary?
I mean, the season as a whole has blown me away so far, to be honest with you. Mainly the support from everyone on TikTok and other social channels has been absolutely incredible. It's taken off way more than I could have imagined. And I mean, even individually, the races themselves have been just fantastic to attend. I thought by this point this year that there'd be some races that I wouldn't have enjoyed or I don't want to go back to. But genuinely, so far, I would go back to any of the races I've been to. So yeah, I can't complain at all. And Hungary was the same. It was fantastic. I met loads of people out there, loads of fellow F1 fans. It was great to chat to them. And also a pretty good race as well, which is always nice, isn't it? So.
And we've got some interaction in the chat box, Brandon. Gary, who is an ever-present on the show, he's pretty much the unofficial co-host of it. And he's in Vienna with his wife after being in Hungary. And I'm sure she wants to kill him because they should be at a romantic dinner or something right now. But he's apologising for not catching up with you over the Grand Prix weekend. Both of you were clearly having too much fun.
Exactly. No worries at all, Gary. I hope you had a great time as well because, yeah, I had a great weekend. Particularly on the Saturday, it was very, very sunny. So the warmth was very nice. It looked like potentially it was going to rain on Sunday at some points, but held off, didn't it? But yeah, a fantastic weekend. Great fun.
Now, of course, Brandon, we're going to be delving into everything that happened across the weekend. We're going to be chopping this up and throwing it across the socials, etc., with your handle nice and bright on there. So hopefully more people can follow the journey. But let's pull it all the way back. Where did your love affair first start with the world of Formula One, Brandon?
Yeah, sure. I mean, honestly, it's as soon as I can remember. So ever since I was 2 years old, 3 years old, I've been into Formula One through my dad, really. So my dad loves Formula One. He got me into it. And then when I started watching it, it was the sort of Michael Schumacher era. So the red car out front leading the way was he basically became my childhood hero. So lots of people have like David Beckham or whoever else, but mine was Michael Schumacher. So I was always dressed up in like his overalls, his helmet, playing with toy cars as a kid. So yeah, ever since I can remember, I've loved F1, and yeah, all my life I've barely missed a race, to be honest. If I'm not busy, I'm watching F1. So and obviously particularly this year.
And if you had to stamp your mask to a particular team, is it the red of Ferrari?
It is purely because of Schumacher, yeah. So then since Leclerc came in and became sort of the face of Ferrari, I guess, I've been a Leclerc fan since then. But this season, obviously, it's looking like a McLaren battle for the title. So I'm just hoping it goes down to the wire and goes down to Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, I'm just asking some of the guys what they thought of the race. So Juaned, sorry if that's pronounced incorrect, just saying he enjoyed the race until the last couple of laps. I thought that was the exciting bit, you know, where we saw Oscar and Lando go toe-to-toe, but maybe he's an Oscar fan then and wanted him to get the overtake done. Gary also saying it was a good one all round in his opinion. We also had a little sprinkling of rain, didn't we, which kind of kept us on our toes at some point. But it was a fun one to watch. And I guess if we start looking even at qualifying, Brandon, bit of a surprise in the shape of Charles Leclerc outperforming the McLarens. But give me an insight into the vibe in the stands What did people make of that on the Saturday, Brandon?
It really felt like a shock, I think. I mean, not surprising, I guess, because after all the practice sessions, it was looking like another sort of McLaren domination, right? So, the it did seem like a sense of surprise around the grandstands. I think people were happy though. There was lots of cheers and lots of happiness, including myself, of course. But I think the hope then died out the day after, didn't it? But hey, at least we had Saturday to enjoy, and we celebrated that one. So
yeah, Ewan also saying he thought it was a very good race as well. And let's get into a few more specifics with teams then as well, Brandon. It was a great day at the office for the Papaya boys once again, but perhaps the way round that we didn't expect. What did you make of what happened on circuit on the Sunday? Do you think that was always the plan with Lando, or do you think it was reactionary to what happened on the first lap?
I think it was reactionary, personally, and obviously it worked out very nicely for him. I think the plan was always going to be the two-stop, in my opinion, but the way it all panned out, I think, like, especially with the McLaren pace, it was sort of a no-brainer for him to try something different and try and win the race. And I'm glad that happened, because that's what gives us the excitement, right? Them split strategies. Whereas if they'd all stuck to the same number of stops, we probably wouldn't have had that tension at the end. So no, I was surprised, because I predicted a Piastri win before the weekend. I think that he had the pace, and if he maybe was on the one stop as well, then we would have had a different result. But it was good to see them battling at the end.
What did you make of Lando's attempted moves in the first? It was the first corner, really, wasn't it? He kind of throw it down the inside, but then had to pull out of it, and then in fact lost a position to George. Now, in hindsight, we can look at it and say, "Oh, this cloud had a silver lining," but perhaps a little too eager once again on the decision-making front, or did he have to go for it?
Yeah, it was a funny one, wasn't it? Because the actual race start itself, it looked like Lando probably had like the best start, like the initial start period. And then coming down to the first corner, I don't know, maybe it was a bit of cautiousness, or after like what happened to Bottas in 2021 and various other incidents as well. So maybe it was that, but it was a surprise. And to be honest with you, in person as well, it was hard to actually notice. So when they obviously they're flying past you, you look up at the screen, and then the next thing I knew, Lando was in fifth, and I was like, "Oh, blimey, he must have had a really bad start." But then when I watched the race highlights back, I'm like, actually, his start was actually pretty on it. So it was a bit of a surprise, but yeah, hey, it's what it is, right?
Like the point that you've made, it was great to see such different inter-race strategies from teams, and to a certain extent, not knowing what people were doing, right? So they were running. It was only pretty much Lewis that started on the hard tyre, wasn't it? And Ewan saying it was great, to have 1 and 2 stop options out there on circuit. And as we watched, and even as the experts and the commentary team watched, you don't actually know what they're going to do. And in the end, it worked out for Lando. Was there any part of you that thought, "Oh, hang on, he's going to get this wrong, and Oscar's going to easily track him down at the end and overtake"? Because Oscar did have a tyre delta as well, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that for a long time. I was pretty certain, even with 15 laps to go-ish, that I thought, well, Oscar will catch him and get past with at least a few laps left. So it was surprising that didn't happen, I thought, to be honest. And I wonder if it's to do with the lockup as well on that sort of penultimate lap. Maybe if that didn't happen and he held that speed through, maybe he'd had another chance going into that last lap. But yeah, I guess we'll never know. But I never thought it would reach that point. Like you say, I actually thought that Piastri would have got him by that point.
Do you think that there's something subconsciously with both McLaren drivers, though, that perhaps they cannot be as aggressive as they would like to be because they've had a sit down with the team and they've been very definitely warned about their conduct on circuit, haven't they?
Yeah, maybe. I think I'd view it in a different way, in that like McLaren are so far clear that they're going to win the constructors 100%. So if you're a driver, I feel like the consequence is much less now, because the reality is that the likelihood is it'll be a 1-2 finish in the drivers. With the constructors is almost wrapped up already. So you'd think that would make them, I don't know, a bit more aggressive. Maybe that'll happen towards the end of the season when it's like crunch time and they're still separated by a few points. So that's what I'm hoping and expecting, to be honest, later in the season.
And we've got Felix as well, just saying you can also see what happens when the tyres last a little longer. You get better racing and more strategy options. What are your thoughts, Brandon, on the the influence, shall we say, that tyres have on F1 racing? Because I know there are some fans out there that are pretty much like the drivers and just say, listen, make an indestructible tyre and let's find out who is the best racing the hardest.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Monaco sort of reflected that, right? When they enforced these extra stops and it didn't really improve it much. So I think it's hard, and I think it depends very much on the circuit, because we have had other Grand Prix where degradations made it a fantastic race. So I can see both sides of the coin. I mean, I think personally, I actually like it how it is currently, and I like the way that Pirelli do their tyres. So I wouldn't change it too much. I think there's other things that can change instead. Yeah, I'd personally stick with what we've got currently.
Gary just making the point there. Yep, we all saw it, Gaz, on lap 69. It was almost another papaya collision, but the lockup kind of got him out of it. And I think Lando was aware of what was happening as well. But yeah, it's going to be a difficult one. The longer the season goes on, the more of an influence it's going to have on where that Drivers' Championship goes. I know a lot of people have been saying, well, Oscar seems like a lot more of a level-headed individual. But if Lando hadn't have had that collision in Canada, and then also the issue, he had the shunt in qualifying, didn't he, in Saudi, Lando would be leading the championship. So I think it's a lot tighter than people are actually giving Lando credit for. What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I think that the consistency is more there of Oscar. And I think from what I've seen online, like that opinion is shared. We see them few odd mistakes a bit more from Lando, but maybe Lando's got that bit of extra like raw pace when he's at his best. So maybe that's what makes them such a good pair and such a tight battle at the moment. So yeah, I'd say they're pretty tightly matched, and yeah, it's hard to pick, isn't it? It's hard to pick who you actually think is going to win it, because one week I go, oh, Piastri's going to start pulling a gap now, and then Lando goes and wins a couple of races, and we're back to what is it now, like only single digits between them.
Yeah, 9 points
in the championship. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So no, it's hard to call at the moment.
Yeah. So in Lando's defense, though, what did you make of his composure across this race to implement this alternative strategy that paid off?
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I think it's actually probably one of his best race wins.
As you said on the screen there, look.
Yeah, there you go. And although some people were saying a bit lucky due to how the strategies panned out, I wouldn't necessarily say it was luck. I'd say that at that point it was the strategy to go on, and like you're going to race separately. But like I said, because they're so clear in the championship, I don't think they need to necessarily favour one or the other. If one's leading, one's not, like race against each other as you would someone else, and it worked out for him this time. But he had to pull it off, right? So if he didn't hold on to his tyres like he did, then Piastri probably would have overtaken and got him. So yeah, it was impressive. It was.
Gary's previous comment, I'll just bring it back up there. What do you think they do the longer the season goes on at McLaren? Because it feels like they're going to go back to back. My little promo video for this show, I was just twisting around my my little air freshener with one on each side, and that's how it feels like it could go for the rest of the season. So are they literally going, as a team, going to have to be reactive, do you think, to what's happening on circuit?
I think so. I don't see why they wouldn't, because it makes it more entertaining for everyone watching. And like I've already said, like because there's no battle with another team for the constructors, it seems like a no-brainer for me. So I really hope that is the case. And because of them reasonings as well, I can't imagine them actually then going out favouring one driver, because I feel like the backlash would be massive from from certain fan bases, right? So I just can't see them doing that for that reason, and also, yeah, just from the entertainment side of it as well.
I'm going to put you on the spot now. Then let's go to race 24 in Abu Dhabi. You said you hope it goes all the way, but if it did go all the way and it goes down to Abu Dhabi on the last race of the season, who's going to take the checker flag and the title, in your opinion, Brandon?
If I had to put money on it, I would go Oscar Piastri still. I think the consistency is just there a bit more, like I said earlier. But if Lando sorts that out for the second half of the season, then obviously he's got just as much of a chance. But yeah, if I had to put money on it right now, Oscar Piastri, that's what I'm going for.
So once again, Papaya dominated the podium. Their fourth 1-2 in a row this season, 7 overall. But the final position on the steps was for George Russell, probably slightly to your pain, Brandon. So before we talk about the Scuderia, let's talk about George's performance across the weekend. It was another good one from George, and a reminder to his bosses that he's going to be a talent in demand, George Russell. What's going on there?
100%. And I've said it for a while this season. I think that he's still one of the most underrated drivers on the grid. I really rate George Russell. Think that he is generally one of the top guys. And if he had a championship winning car, he'd be right up there battling for it. So when all the rumours came out, recently around Verstappen, I know he's going to be staying at Red Bull now, but well, you can't turn down the chance to get Max Verstappen. But when everyone was sort of so certain of it being Verstappen and Antonelli, I was quite surprised because Russell's been in the Mercedes family for so long, but also is such a quick driver that a pairing of Verstappen and Russell one day would be, although they may clash a bit, speed-wise would be incredible. I think would be the best pairing on the grid. So I think he's having a great season and another great race. Like you say, at my detriment this week, because I'm halfway through the race thinking Leclerc's going to win and then he ends up off the podium. But hey, no, it was very impressive from Russell again.
Yeah, George came out though and said pre-race, so I think this was on the Thursday possibly, or at very least Friday morning, that he's found himself in his career for the first time perhaps in an area where him and the team's goals don't align. And that's after we've heard from Max that Max has said, I'm staying. So what's stopping George signing on the dotted line for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really tough one, isn't it? Because in terms of other options, there doesn't seem to be any there. But I would say that for like both sides. Obviously, Mercedes would have a big choice of drivers, but I don't think that they're, other than Max Verstappen, they can get anyone the level of George Russell. And similarly for George Russell, I don't think that he would be able to move anywhere that is the sort of might of Mercedes-Benz. So it's a real question mark. Honestly, I don't know. Is it just a money question? It would surprise me if it was, because I feel like, a lot of these drivers have so much money anyway that it's more about the winning and having the right car for them, isn't it? So maybe we'll see it across the summer break. Maybe some news will happen, but I'm really stumped, to be honest with you, on that one.
Yeah, Gary reckons there's going to be an announcement during the summer break. Ewan, here we go. Could Charles Leclerc go to Mercedes? He must have seen. I saw a video this week, and it was titled something like "The Real Truth About Certain Drivers in F1," and it referred to Charles Leclerc as like someone who's got Stockholm syndrome, and they said if he's serious about winning a championship, he needs to leave Ferrari. He's been there. Is it 7-8 years now? He's been there, and it's not happening for him. So if he's serious about it, leave. But he's clearly not. He's just enjoying the ride. What are your thoughts on that, Ewan?
Well, I think that's I'm not so sure on that one. The thing is, like, when these reg changes happen every few years, there's always that one team that tends to be up there and dominating, right? And if Ferrari had pulled it out, one of them reg changes, and were the team out front, the sort of strategy errors and the various other errors that happened probably wouldn't have been highlighted as much, because they would have ended up winning anyway. And next year with the new regs, like, who knows? Maybe Ferrari will have the fastest car, and these strategy calls and these other small things that happen, again, won't make too much of a difference, and Leclerc can go on to win. So next year I think will be pivotal. It's a bit like people were saying for Max as well, with sort of waiting to see like next year who will be quickest, because I think moving, whether it's Leclerc or whoever else this year, would be an extremely bold move, not knowing sort of where the cars are going to end up next year.
Do you think perhaps that's what's stalling the Russell contract announcement? Maybe George wants a longevity of security, and no one knows where they stand. And in a sense, Max has come out and said, I will be racing next year, but that's just next year, right? And like you say, he's the most desirable driver on the grid. So if 2026 he's not back at the front of the races, then his head's going to be turned elsewhere again, and it's going to be turned towards whoever is winning races, isn't it?
Exactly. I think you could be spot on, to be honest. Yeah. And maybe that is what's holding it up with George. But I go back to like my earlier point with that, in that even if it was just a 1-year extension for Russell, and then it ends up Mercedes being the fastest car, I can't see a world where Mercedes wouldn't want both of them in the team for 2027, to be honest. But I guess, like you say, that sort of nailing it down and being locked into that contract for Russell might be an important thing for him. So yeah, that's a very good point and could well be the reason.
And also, of course, the responsibility of a nurturing of the young talent that is Kimi Antonelli. Didn't have the best race weekend. Qualifying was another real struggle, but he did get himself in the points. So is it kind of this weekend going to be somewhat good for him mentally, somewhat bad for him still mentally? In my notes here, I've got he seems really fragile at the moment, doesn't he, Kimi Antonelli?
Yes, very much so. Yeah, I think it'll be a boost, like getting points after so many poor results and DNFs recently. I know some of them obviously not his fault as well, but just being back, like crossing the line and actually getting some points on the board, even though it was just 10th. I think that's bound to help him out a bit. But yeah, it's a bit, like you say, it's a bit yo-yo, isn't it? Because I think that podium he had in Montreal, like that was flanked by a number of bad results, and there's suddenly this podium and then the bad results, and it's been an interesting rookie year for him. I wouldn't say it's necessarily been the one he was after so far, but like you say, it's a bit of a learning curve, isn't it?
Yeah, he started on fire, and then, like you mentioned, this period that did include the podium, but that podium, and then this weekend, that's the only 2 points finishes in 8 races. So 6 races without points. You can't afford that in a team the magnitude of Mercedes, can you? So let's fast forward a little bit. They hold the cards, Mercedes, in the sense that they manage both drivers as well. Could you see a future where Antonelli goes racing somewhere else for a little bit?
I think so. I think that, because I know Mercedes obviously have links to other teams as well. In the past, they've had good links with Williams. So I think that dropping him back to another team, particularly if the Verstappen opportunity came about, I don't see that being a bad thing necessarily. I think it could almost be like what happened with Albon in a way, where Albon was with Red Bull and not necessarily performing like we expected, went to Williams, and he's been very good at Williams. And sort of regain that reputation that was maybe lost a bit at Red Bull. So I wouldn't see that necessarily being a bad thing for him. I think it could happen.
Yeah, of course, we'll keep our eye on it. And interestingly, Mercedes, of course, next season take on a customer in the shape of Alpine as well, who definitely have a second seat that is, I'd say, still up for grabs in some shape or form. But we will get to that in a little while, Brandon. I now want to get into your boys' Scuderia Ferrari, and we've got to start with the pole man, Charles Leclerc. He made a very valid point when he secured pole, and he said, "I no longer understand F1." Neither do we. I mean, there are so many factors that impact a driver's performance across a lap. A good analogy I heard years ago, I can't remember who it was from, and they said driving an F1 car is like a constant moving target. So every lap is completely different. And the McLaren boys, something happened. They both ended up half a second slower than their Q2 times. But Charles did what he needed to do, which is a consistent, solid lap. And these moments of opportunity showed themselves. And then it was just an unfortunate race for him, wasn't it? We heard him busting the backside of the team a little bit. But then post-race, there's been some extra knowledge that we've learned with an issue with the car.
Yeah, I don't know how much I believe about the issue of the car, to be honest. but like, yeah, who am I to say that? Maybe it was true, but I'll be honest. Like, I took a bit more hope away from the weekend than I think other Ferrari fans did. Like the fact that he was able to put it on pole. I know maybe because McLaren's didn't quite perform like they should have, but I think that's a massive boost. And for half of the race, he had such good pace. Like I was for the first half of the race, I was standing in the main grandstand, and I then went off to go and find my sister, who was in general admission. And that first half of the race, by the time I left the grandstand, I was thinking to myself, this is actually on here. It's actually going to happen. Like at the start, he was gapping Piastri. I'm like, this is unbelievable. And then I go and find my sister in general admission, and then realise it's all starting to go wrong. I know that it didn't work out quite like Ferrari fans would have hoped. But like I say, I think there was a few positives that are there that weren't there in previous weekends. So we'll at least take that.
Yeah, I love how you're so skeptical about the team and just saying, I'm not sure. I mean, when you look at, like you said, the first half of the race, the pace was so good that it did feel like something happened to the car. it doesn't make sense that they wouldn't. But then it's open talk back, isn't it, amongst the drivers? So if they told him that they have a problem, then competitors around know they got a problem. Like what? How do you do what do you do? Because if he's then criticizing the team there, you want to be able to say something back to him, but then you don't want everyone to hear that there's an issue with the car. But Charles, clearly there was something discussed in the pre-race briefing that he didn't agree with, and he felt that they'd implemented that during the race, and that was why he was losing so much time.
Exactly, like them radio messages are sort of what made me doubt it a bit, because it's all a bit cryptic and confusing, isn't it? So that's literally the reason why I thought that. But yeah, like you say, maybe there was an issue that caused it, or maybe it was just that unfortunately the pace died off on the different tyres at the end. But hey.
So let's go to the other half of the Ferrari garage. I'm not going to start with performance first. I'm going to start by heading to the chat box, because Felix has asked, and I don't know if you know anything about this or anybody does, what is Lewis Hamilton going to announce on the 8th of August? Has you heard this? I've not heard anything about it, but is there anything that we might expect?
I've just heard this 8th of August thing going around, but I don't know where it actually came from. So I'm not sure what to expect. But with these sort of things, I normally try and like keep my expectations low, and then suddenly it like can blow your brain away. So a bit like with the actual announcement of going to Ferrari, like no one expected that. So I'm just thinking like, it'll be some sponsorship announcement, and then maybe it'll be like, retiring from F1 or something. But yeah, I guess we'll see on Friday.
This is where Ewan takes it. He just said he was bad in quali and the race. You know, he didn't make any real impression on the race. Could he be close to retiring from Formula One? What are your thoughts on that, Brandon? He made some big comments, didn't he, last week, saying that he refuses to leave Ferrari without being a champion. But is that realistic from what we're seeing performance-wise at the moment?
I don't think so. No, I mean, even if next year they had the fastest car and were dominant, I personally don't see him beating Leclerc over a season based on what we've seen so far. And at the start of the season, I wouldn't have said that Lewis would cut that sort of 2-year deal short, but like based on the interviews that we saw over the weekend, like I've never seen anything like that. So maybe that will happen. And I still think that would be a surprise, because I still think that there's part of, even though the interviews were very down in the dumps, I still think there's a part of him that thinks he can do something there. So I don't expect that to happen on Friday, but yeah, who knows? Maybe.
Yeah, Gary making the point, it's a bit of a self-belief issue at the moment, and he very much wears his heart on his sleeve as well, Lewis Hamilton, because again, last week he was saying, after I think it was the race performance, saying about how much belief he has in that team. So I've worked and interviewed a few elite athletes in different sports, and they always say, don't get too high on the highs and don't get too low on the lows. It feels like Lewis isn't doing that at the moment, doesn't it? Yeah,
that's very true. And I have thought similar, even with, I know this is obviously the Ferrari part, but I thought similar with Lando recently as well, with the, you know, when he's had a few wins and a second place, and he seems really low after that second place. But that's also reflected in Lewis recently as well. But even he said, like, there is stuff going on behind the scenes and we don't know about that. So I'd love to be a fly on the wall and actually know what that stuff is he's talking about, because that may like decode a lot of what's going on right now, and rather than all the rumors that are flying. So
yeah, building on that, I was having a conversation with my friend Saturday night. Shout out to Richie. He's not on the show today, but this might make it into a clip. I don't know. But I was having a conversation with him, and he said that Lewis has also got a lot going on outside of racing now, right? You know, when he was at his most dominant, yeah, okay, he was on the odd billboard with partners and stuff, but now with his Mission 44, which we know he's heavily passionate about, and I know he does a lot of other stuff in fashion, and does it feel that perhaps he isn't quite giving the 100% to race performance anymore? Could that be an issue?
Maybe, or maybe it's something to do with the burnout side, because I know in other interviews he's also mentioned about how chaotic, or not chaotic, but how full on this year has been from a work aspect. And I guess he's probably talking being at a new team, learning everything about the new team, and trying to race well, but also his other stuff, like you say, that he has going on. So maybe it's just a case of too much stuff, and now it's catching up with him a bit. And you know, he's not getting any older either, is he? I know that obviously we've got Fernando, who's a few years ahead of him and still going strong. But it's got to play a part that I think that, Hamilton's best years were probably between 5 and 10 years ago when he was at his peak age and peak performance. So maybe that's playing a part as well.
I mean, the second half of 2021 was pretty impressive, though.
That's very true, to be fair. That's very true. And what a season it was as well. I don't think we'll ever have anything like that again. Unbelievable. But
yeah, I just had a quick Google as well while you were there, just finishing your soundbite. Also, when Lewis first started racing, there were 17 races per season. We're now up to 24. The world of Formula One, I know every other job, apart from the driver's seat, they are doing things like job share now. We see team principals not at every single race, don't we? What do you think that could mean for the future of the cockpit in Formula One?
So are you suggesting maybe like rotating drivers potentially, and when there's even more races? I mean, I can't ever see that happening personally, but you are right, and I can't believe that when he started, it was only 17. Like the growth has been nuts, isn't it? Especially since Liberty Media and since Drive to Survive. And
are you old enough to remember 12? I remember 12 races. Like literally, it was one weekend a month you had to watch during the 90s.
We were deprived back then. Just didn't know it. Yeah, and now double. It's crazy, isn't it? But you're right in terms of the toll on the drivers, because like you said, there's not actually many individuals that go to all 24. Even like commentators now, like Crofty is a few off, isn't he? Where Harry Benjamin steps in, and so the fact that they are all tied in and they have to go to all of them, then maybe that does play a part. But I mean, the fact that they all have to do it, I feel like that levels it out still. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a deciding factor, but maybe it takes toll on some more than others. So yeah.
I see Gary just backing me up in the chat box there about 1990s, one race a month. And Gary, I'm going to dig you out here now, mate. I bet you can remember even less. Oh, God. But lovely to have you on the call as always, Gaz. And we're definitely going to look to, I've put it in my diary about doing some kind of fans forum special I want to do, have a couple of the ever presents on. And then maybe get a couple of influencers like yourself, Brandon, back once again and just make it a little bit of a bigger conversation on the call as well. Gary, well, harsh but true. Love it. That's one for your wife, mate, because you're not giving her your full attention on your romantic night in Vienna. But make sure you look after her after this. We're going to push it forward, Brandon. Anyway, great weekend for the guys in green, Aston Martin, after an absolutely abysmal weekend in Belgium. But what I found most interesting, I saw Lance Stroll walking along with one of the reporters on the box, and he clearly was like, I don't know what's happened to this car. He said, last week we were at the back, and he said, and now we look like we got some performance. It's great to have the performance, but what does it mean if you don't understand how you got it?
Yeah, I was quite surprised by that interview as well. It did make me laugh a bit. Because I instantly thought it's just the style of track. Like Hungary is so different to Belgium that I didn't expect it to be quite that extreme. Like from literally the back of the grid to they started 5th and 6th, didn't they? And the difference is, that difference is crazy. But to hear him say that is, I guess, a bit worrying in a sense, isn't it? That you sort of want to understand what's going on, and you worry a bit that if you come back off the summer break and they're at the back again for Zandvoort, then they're thinking, what the hell is going on? So yeah. And
Fernando Alonso's birthday week, they even managed to give him a session off because it was his birthday. I know that's not the reason why they did it, but great for Fernando. 5 points finishes in the last 6 races now. How will he be feeling about a 2026 Aston Martin project, do you think?
I think very excited. Yeah, very excited. And because Adrian Newey's there putting all of his effort into that car, that could be good signs. I know it doesn't always start the first year with Adrian Newey being like instant success, but you've got to feel pretty confident, I reckon, with that setup at Aston Martin now. And although it's, like you say, it's 5 points finishes in the last 6, I feel like it could have been more. Like Fernando's performances prior to that have actually been really good all season, but he's had some horrible luck throughout the year. I'm glad that like the last few races he's actually getting some points off of the pace that he's had, which has been nice to see. Nice to see.
Yeah, I like it. Ellie in the chat box saying Nui is cooking. He's got to have done a little something. I mean, like, it makes me think back to, remember when we had the two cars above Monaco and you looked at the difference between the RB21 and the Williams, and sorry, no, it wasn't the RB19, sorry, and the Williams. And in that moment, you saw the Nui effect and someone who really understood the ground effect era of cars. I'm sure there's some really, from his perspective, obvious things about that Aston performance that he would have been able to talk about immediately and give suggestions on. Do you think?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? You would. But yeah, the amount of knowledge he must have in his brain is quite incredible. I mean, this year I was really lucky because Aston Martin invited me on the Saturday to a bit of a hospitality experience for the British Grand Prix. Nice. And we managed to have a factory tour during that, which was incredible. But when we had the factory tour, obviously this is the morning of the Saturday, went up the stairs and we looked across and like all of the desks are empty and you can see in the far corner Adrian Newey's office and he's there with his massive sketch pad sketching away like on his own on a Saturday morning of a Grand Prix weekend. I'm like, yeah, he's locked in. He's grinding away, ready for 26. He is. So yeah, I reckon that watch out for Aston Martin next year. They'll be right up there.
Nice. What a great experience. So if Fernando's excited about it, could we see a wry smile eventually from Lance Stroll as well? Because we know he hasn't been the happiest recently. But do you think that they're on an upward trajectory now for the second half of the season? Or do you still think it's pot luck at the moment for the rest of 25?
I'm still going to pot luck, honestly. I think that the yo-yoing of the midfield teams has been quite surprising this year. It's happened more so than it has on any year that I can remember. I mean, I guess that's sort of evident with points totals at the moment. Like all of their points totals are actually much higher. Like you normally expect to see some teams down in the sort of single digits all year, but that's just not happened this year. And I know that Alpine at the moment are lagging a bit and they're at the bottom, but that could easily be someone else in a few races' time based on how it's gone so far. So I think it will carry on like that all the rest of the year, particularly as a lot of developments focused on next year. So they're sort of mainly stuck with the cars they've got. So the different tracks will make a massive difference to the order of the midfield, I reckon. Yeah,
like you're saying, they've jiggled around a lot, haven't they? You currently got Williams in P5 on 70 points. But I remember, didn't Haas go into P5 about 4 or 5 races ago? And they're now in P9. So
yeah,
it shows you how quickly it can move and it can change. And that's what I love so much about this season. And, you know, you're excited about race day by the end of qualifying every weekend, which is what we want, don't we?
100%. Yeah. But it's the same with all the other teams, isn't it? Like that podium for Nico Hülkenberg and the points finishes he had before that, boosting Sauber up out of nowhere. Because I remember at the start of the year, the first few races, everyone's thinking, will Sauber even get a point? And now they've got a bunch of them and a podium. So no, it's really nice to see, particularly as we've almost got like a 2-horse fight at the front in one team. It's nice to have some different teams battling out further back. So something else to focus on during the race.
Yeah, like you mentioned, we'll turn our attention to Sauber now. And last season, I remember after the summer break, just cheering them because I didn't want any team to end up with 0 points. And they managed to pull it off, right? But all of a sudden, from the team that was rock bottom, they're now up to P7. Gabriel Bortoleto seems to have really found his feet in that team, doesn't he? What have you made of the young man's performance in the last 3 or 4 races?
He's been brilliant, isn't he? I was really impressed with him prior to that, to be honest. I thought that he'd shown really good bursts of pace. Again, maybe didn't have all the luck throughout the sort of first parts of the season. But all year, I've thought he's right up there in terms of one of the best rookies. I guess it's off the back of the F2 battle last year between him and Hadjar. I'd say them two have been the most impressive throughout the year. And that continues to be. I know the last few races, Bortoleto's had that rise, whereas Hadjar's maybe dropped off a bit. But that battle's been great as sort of like rookie of the year. So I'm excited to see more of that for the rest of the year.
Yeah, imagine at the beginning of the season, you'd have said Sauber will score points in 6 consecutive races. You would have never, ever believed it, would you? But we seem to really be seeing the impact of some hierarchy behind the scenes and perhaps some serious investment from Audi into this project. Yeah,
definitely. Earlier than we thought, right? Like you say, no one actually expected anything from this season. I think Hülkenberg probably went there thinking like maybe in 2026 I've got a chance for a podium. but he took that off this year in the end. And who knows next year what might happen with that Audi backing. And I think they've got like a solid team in place now as well, with the people that they've nabbed from other teams. Yeah, they could become like a right solid contender next season based off the pace of this season.
Yeah, so I'm just asking in the chat box as well, what do people think Audi could do in 2026? Obviously, they have a huge history in the world of motorsport in other series, and they're not just going to come to make up the numbers, are they, Audi?
No, definitely not. And the rich history has been very successful, hasn't it? Particularly at places like Le Mans. So it's not exactly easy to go to Le Mans and win, but Audi have done it plenty of times. So I personally think they could have a real impact in F1, which is great to see as well. Love seeing the big names in F1 because it just means the sport's growing even more. No, I love to see that.
You are making a really good point. It's always great to see South American drivers on the grid as well. All that history embedded from the success of Ayrton Senna. What's going on with you, Brandon, then? When are you heading there? Have you booked it? Have you sorted it out yet? That must be one of the more difficult ones to achieve logistically without spending too much and taking too much time off. And are you excited that perhaps they're going to have a home hero?
Yeah, 100%. That should make the atmosphere even better. I'm sure that I've never been to Brazil before, but I'm sure that the atmosphere prior was fantastic. So the fact that they're now going to have someone to support, I'm really excited for that one. And I have actually sorted the sort of details for that now. I sorted that a few weeks ago, and it's a pretty ridiculous trip. I arrive there on the Saturday morning. I'll go straight to the track, stay one night Saturday night, go to the track Sunday, and I fly back out Sunday night. So I'm literally just in Brazil for the weekend. Which is ridiculous, but it's part of the challenge. So it has to be done. And I think for that one, it will only I think it was 1 day annual leave I'm taking. So quite literally just a long weekend in Brazil. So yeah, a bit silly, but yeah, it's what it is.
No, and going back to days of old as well, saying it should be the last race of the season, Sao Paulo, many years ago. Yeah, but now it's very much changed, and money talks a lot, doesn't it? And people pay big money to have the first race and the last race of the season. We were always used to be first race of the season in Australia, didn't it, as well? But yeah, that's long gone now. But listen, time moves forwards and big names come into Formula One, and we love the fact it's becoming more and more part of pop culture because of that, and the big names are coming in. Actually, let me ask you, Brandon, have you seen those rumours about Porsche as well being involved in some shape or form? And I'm seeing like Williams being rumoured as well. What do you think it'd be like to have a big name like Porsche in there in some shape or form?
That'd be fantastic. I saw some rumours about that months ago, but I haven't seen them for a while. So, I mean, any big name, particularly like Porsche, I mean, that would be incredible having them in F1 as well. I think the more manufacturers and the more big names, the better, particularly if we're having even more different engine manufacturers, and the more variation, I think, is the better for F1 to create them differences and them good races that we all hope for. So I'm all for it. I'm very excited for next year with Cadillac joining as well, because to have more than 20 cars again will be fantastic. I remember the start of the 2010s when we had 24 cars on the grid. And yeah, I think there is a limit, but to an extent, the more cars, the better. I think 22, 24 cars, can't complain. Just more
qualifying
racing,
could be an issue, though. That's the only thing, right? It's qualifying, having to get around. I wonder if they would I wonder if they'd ever do something similar to other race series. So I do some work in Formula E, and they split the grid. So they give you 2 time slots, depending if you're odd or even numbers in the championship. And then they do a duel for the top 4 of each. And I think that would be a nice little option on a sprint weekend, just to change up the qualifying format, make it as different as possible. But I think that's something that's really going to come into play as there's more and more cars on the grid, because qualifying is becoming more and more difficult for all teams to get an optimum lap during such a short session as well. Listen, we've only got about 15 minutes or so left, or just over. Still got 5 teams to cover, so let's get into it and
rattle
keep going
through them.
yeah. So talking about this uber competitive midfield, and it's being really helped as well by the rise of a certain Liam Lawson. That, again, if you'd have said that at the beginning of the season, we never would have imagined. 4 points finishes in his last 7 races now. Feels like the young man's turned a corner.
Yes, yeah, very much so. And I think he just regained his confidence that he had prior to Red Bull. That's how I see it anyway. I think.
Do you feel he had too much before Red Bull, and then could this actually help him, this experience?
I personally don't think he did. I think that he was just showing a bit of that confidence externally, but I don't think it was ever too much. I think it was sort of justified based off of his performances previously at VCARB. So I reckon it did take a bit of a hit on him, though, getting demoted after them 2 races. And maybe now that's quite a way in the past. Well, I say quite a way in the past. It's probably only a few months ago, right? But so many races since then, it feels like a long time ago. So since that's happened, I reckon now that he's regaining a bit of that confidence. And we're seeing it, I guess, with his results. So impressive.
The other side of the garage for VCARB, Isaac Hadjar, still the only driver never to have been excluded in Q1 in his career. I love that stat, and long may it continue. Isn't flying quite as much as he was, but in his defence, there was a sprinkling of rain during this weekend, and I keep saying that when it's rain, don't count on Hadjar. He's not a man for wet weather conditions.
After Australia, particularly.
Yeah, Australia and Belgium. And I'm sure that one of the other ones where it rained as well, that he ended up retiring. But this is he only finished one place lower than he qualified. But he didn't make the impact that he would have liked to this weekend.
No, and I think with the midfield battle as well, with that tight battle we were talking about, it's quite tough to actually break forward if you're qualifying a bit lower down. So if you're not having that sort of stunning qualifying in Q3, then it's quite hard to make that progress. I think probably because a lot of them are quite evenly matched now. So maybe that's what we've seen in the last few races as well. The qualifying not quite as high has impacted his end results. And I think there was one race he did get to Q3, and then maybe I think it was strategy then dropped him back. So I think there was other factors at play, and I reckon that he's still got that pace we saw from the races before. So I expect to see that again in the next few races.
Question for you. How would he do if we put Max Verstappen in a VCARB? If these two are performing how they are, and they've outperformed the Red Bull this race weekend, what would Max have done in that car?
It's a really good question, isn't it? I'd love to see it. But I think that he would have finished in the same spot he did in the Red Bull, if not higher, this weekend, I reckon. And I think that Red Bull is just a horrific car to drive, because it seems to ruin any driver that goes there other than Max. And I hope that Hadjar doesn't go there until there seems to be a bit more stability in the sort of Red Bull camp, because the second seat curse is a bit of a baffling one, isn't it? And like you see, the drivers come back down to VCARB and are doing much better again, or they leave Red Bull and doing much better again. So it's a real anomaly. I can't say it. Anomaly. Anomaly.
Anomaly.
There you go.
Yeah, anomaly.
I've given it to you. Yeah, anomaly. We've got it now.
Felix just asking, just a bit of clarity though, Felix. A new CEO. So do you mean of the Red Bull group, or are you talking about Alan Permain, who's gone in at VCARB now, as Lauren McKees has gone up to the senior team? What do you mean by that, Felix? Let us know, and I'll pose it to our guest, Brandon. But whilst we do wait for that, Brandon, let's push it forward to talk about Red Bull, who had pretty much a weekend to forget. Yuki Tsunoda returning to his regular Q1 exits, and Max really struggling to hold on to that car. And the quote from Max was that they will struggle to win another race this year.
Yeah, I mean, what's going on with Red Bull? The like fall from grace from halfway through last year is pretty crazy, and the changes they've had now as well, no doubt, make a difference. But I think it probably puts a bit more respect back on Sergio Perez's name as well, after all the abuse he was getting last year, and then you see what's happened this year with Lawson and Tsunoda. Perez is probably sitting by a pool laughing to himself, ready for that Cadillac seat next year. So. It's pretty of a crazy one, and definitely unexpected after 2023 and the start of last year. Yeah,
I mean, Yuki as well was only 1/10 off of Max's time, but because the grid is so tight, he was out in Q1. The thing is, when you look at it statistically, Yuki has scored no points now in 7 races. Has he got kind of a free pass, do you think, for the rest of the season, or has he got to put something in at some point?
I think he has a free pass in terms of surviving for the rest of the season, in terms of taking part in all the races. But if these performances continue, then maybe next year we won't see him in a seat. So maybe that's where the free pass sort of ends and where he'll need to perform to actually secure a 26 seat. But it is tough because I think that if he was still in the V-Carb, them 7 races he hasn't got points in, he would have got points in at least a couple of them, I reckon, based on what he was doing before he moved to Red Bull. So yeah, it's a tough one.
Do you have faith in Laurent Mekies to bring them back to the forefront? Do you think Max Verstappen does, and that's the reason why he's publicly now said he's there for 2026? What kind of job do they expect from the new man?
I think that the decision from Max is a bit like we spoke about earlier, with just waiting to see what happens in 26, seeing which teams are fast, seeing which teams aren't. I don't think that it's to do with the background stuff going on. And I do think that that Mekies will do a good job, but I still question whether Red Bull will go after a big name team principal at some point to replace Christian Horner, who was at such a big figure. Maybe Laurent Mekies will become that now that he is the boss at Red Bull, and maybe he'll sort of fill that role over time. But at the moment, I don't see him as that sort of big name team principal like Christian Horner was, or like Toto Wolff is, for example. So it'll be interesting to see if he actually stays for a good few years.
Yeah, Felix has clarified his point, saying he is talking about the team bosses. So that team boss switch, they're going into different organisations, and there's going to be changes that are going to be made. Well, perhaps V-Carb, Alan Permain might not want to rock the boat too much because they've been performing quite well. But a Red Bull, there will be some serious tweaks needed. And Laurent Mekies will be looking at it very differently from a technical perspective, won't he, compared to Christian Horner?
Yeah, true. Yeah, that different view on it. And with the media as well, I think he'll be a very different personality in person. So it'll be interesting to see how Red Bull come across in terms of a media aspect and how sort of fans sort of take to them as well, rather than just with the performances on track. So it's a very different switch because I see them as such like opposing personalities, which you like you say it's bound to have a difference in some aspect, but maybe not this year. Maybe moving into next year. When he'll have more time to actually implement changes, because coming in mid-season must be tough to actually change stuff around too much and, like you say, rock the boat. Even though they're not performing at the moment, he still wants some points on the board and at least to secure a decent finish in the constructors. So we'll see.
Taking a look at Williams, difficult day at the office for the Grove-based team. Now, they started the season well, then they seem to have a bit of a blip. Then Alex Albon has returned, but it's worrying. Carlos Sainz, no points in the last 4 Grand Prix, and he hasn't had a Q3 feature in 7 races now in qualifying. Yeah,
it's very surprising, isn't it? I thought that when they signed him for this year, that he would be a standout performer of the year, and it's not turned out that way at all, is it? And I thought the two of them would be very close in terms of a teammate battle too, but it does seem that Albon really has that advantage in terms of this car at the moment. Whether that's just bedding into a new team still, although it has been half a year now, so you'd think that that Carlos would be getting used to it a bit more. Maybe that is the case, and maybe the fact Albon's been there for a while is helping him out. But maybe we'll see them battling closer towards the end of the year. I don't necessarily see that. I feel like that Albon will sort of remain the dominant force in the team.
Yeah, because Carlos, he took a little while to get going, didn't he, in the Williams? But then he did have a stint where he was regularly scoring points. In front of me, I've got it. He scored points in 5 of 6 races from Saudi through to Canada. But he seems to have fallen off a little bit. And maybe it's a long season, like we keep saying, and there's got to be some mental fatigue in there. So he's going to be one of a few drivers, perhaps, that needs to go away and have a bit of a reset and rest.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the qualifying performance with that tight battle is really, again, another reason, a bit like I said earlier, I think it was for Hajar maybe, that if you're qualifying lower down, if you're getting knocked out in Q1, the chances for points are so slim because of that closeness of pace now in the midfield. And I think that's happened to Carlos a few too many times, unfortunately for him.
Ewan, I think that's a bit harsh, that comment. Say Sainz only joined Williams to remain on the grid. He definitely had another option because there was a whole episode of Drive to Survive about it, wasn't there? I can't remember who it was with. Was it Alpine maybe? And rejoining Renault? Yeah, because he used to race for Renault. So I think it was between Renault, Alpine and Williams. He possibly could have looked at Mercedes, although there was the whispers that they hadn't reached out from him via Drive to Survive. But No, I think that's a bit harsh. What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, a little bit. And I actually thought, why didn't Red Bull take a chance on trying to get him back as well?
Particularly
I'm
because he's
sure
been
that,
teammate of Max's before in the Toro Rosso days.
yeah, and I know that like there was rumours that in the past they sort of clashed heads a bit, but I feel like now that they're both matured more, I don't really see that being an issue, particularly based on their personalities that we see across in interviews and across the coverage. I wouldn't see them necessarily being a pair that would clash that much, and it's definitely would have been a more appealing drive surely to Sainz at that point, but I'm assuming he didn't have that offer on the table. Maybe that was actually a blessing in disguise because obviously look at Red Bull at the moment. So yeah.
And also, we've got to remember there was a lot of moving parts as well, right? If we move it forward to the next team, Haas, Esteban Ocon's GPS signalled up at Grove at the Williams HQ, didn't it, during the off-season? So
Yeah.
Carlos wasn't the only person that Williams were also talking to. But Haas, again, a team that, just a weekend to forget, really. Didn't come together for them. Didn't really for the last Grand Prix, either in Belgium, although they did get double points in the sprint race. I felt for Ollie Behrman because he was going along quite well, but then had a clear problem with the car. And Ollie's been so close with all these P11 finishes, but now it is no points in 8 races, unfortunately, for the rookie. That doesn't look great, does it?
No, and I think he was in that battle for that final points position, wasn't he? When the sort of issues started playing up for him this weekend. So it was a shame. And with Ocon, it seemed like he wasn't really there all weekend. Quite far down the order. So a bit of a question mark on that one. But again, I just think that next race it could be a complete switch again, where people see them both in the points. Like, I mean, that is the beauty of the midfield at the moment, and Haas are definitely a part of that. And like you say, not long ago they were 5th or 6th in the constructors. Now they've dropped down to 9th. So maybe in a couple of races' time they'll be the 5th, 6th again. Then they come Abu Dhabi, they'll be back in 9th again. So it's one of them seasons, I reckon.
Yeah, I think it might have been. Was it Felix in the chat box earlier was talking about the rookie table? Ollie Behrman must be bottom of that now. If we take out Franco Colapinto, because he did have races last season. But Behrman must be bottom now with the turnaround from Bortoleto. A lot of people were excited about Behrman, weren't they, at the beginning of the season? So it hasn't quite gone to plan, perhaps.
Yeah, I think it's hard to make an impact when the midfield is like it is, and particularly the Haas car is like it is. I think that he has showed glimpses in certain races. I wouldn't say he's necessarily been a standout. A bit like I said earlier, I think that's probably been Hadjar and Bortoleto, but he's still, I think, performed well over the course of the season. I think he still deserves his drive and should deserve a seat next season, and if he continues at this pace beyond. But I don't necessarily see him as one of the standout drivers that's going to be pushing, for example, for a Ferrari seat. I know he stepped in Ferrari that one race and did very well, but I don't quite see the level of performance where he would be stepping up to that sort of level of team.
And finally, Alpine. Difficult season for the French outfit. Bottom of the Constructors' Championship by 15 points now. I mean, what needs to change there? I know it's not Pierre Gasly. Franco Colapinto, though, outperforming his teammate this race weekend. So he'll take some positives from that. But as a team, there's a lot of soul searching that needs to happen there, isn't there?
Yeah, I think they probably can't wait for these new regulations to give them a chance to get back into the mix of it. Because, like you say, it's not gone well this year, and I do feel a bit bad for Jack Doohan as well, because I wouldn't say that Franco Colapinto has performed any better than Doohan did when he was in the seat. I know that Colapinto has a bit more backing, and that's why he's in there at the moment. But I wouldn't say the difference between the two has been massive. So I feel a bit bad for him, and I reckon that they're surely just putting their eggs into the 26 basket now, and are giving up a bit on this year, because I don't see where the hope is coming from for the rest of 25.
We mentioned earlier they're going to be powered by Mercedes next year, who do know how to make a power unit in a regulation change. Anthony Davidson said that they could be a team to watch out for next year. What do you think of those comments?
Maybe. I've heard rumours of people saying that the Mercedes power unit is looking like the best one for next year, but I still question, like, where do people get these rumours from? Because everything's so confidential for the 26 for the season, for the engines, for all of the regs and all the development that's happening. I know it's all whispers and here and there, but people saying that Mercedes are looking the strongest for an engine. So you never know if that is the case. Then of course Alpine will be in the mix, but But I always question how much to believe them rumours at this point.
I think they're just turning it back to when we had the power unit change to the hybrid system. And of course, they blew everyone out of the water, didn't they? Back in 2014, wasn't it? We started.
It was.
Power. So maybe they're hoping for that again. But we've got to remember that back then, their head of high performance powertrains was Andy Cowell, who now is team principal of Aston Martin. Right. Yeah. So, and I know they've lost a lot of personnel behind the scenes to competitors because people move around, and that's the long and short of it. And with them, they take their expertise. So it isn't a given that Mercedes, or it could be something as simple as Mercedes actually had the best ground effect, which meant they had the worst porpoising in 2022, right? So you never know how it could end up coming around.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. It's how you want to swing it, isn't it? How you want to position the conversation. So
listen, our downforce is so good that we need to try and hinder it a little bit. Yeah, that seems like such a long time ago. Do you remember though in testing, and they were just putting holes in the side of the cars, in the panels and stuff to try and reduce it there and then? That was a long time ago, but was crazy, fun, crazy. I'm a bit more of a neutral, so I'm just like, as long as everyone's having a good time.
As long as it's close racing and it's exciting, you're happy. No, that's the best way to be. That's the best way to be, 100%. Then you don't get the heartache of supporting a particular team.
Yeah, I've got enough heartache with my football team, mate. I support Charlton Athletic, so I couldn't afford to be like a Ferrari fan as well and have that heartbreak as well. But listen, Brandon, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Of course, halfway through the season, we've done 14 races now, so 10 more to go. That's 10 more trips for you in this huge challenge that you've set yourself. How are you feeling about it more than halfway through? And are you enjoying it? And what can we expect for the last 10 races from you and your content?
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely loving it still, just as much as I was at the start of the season. I'm looking forward to a little break now for a few weeks, but I'm sure that in a few weeks' time, I'll just be raring to go again. So yeah, 2 more European races and then 8 flyaway races. And I've heard that, them final 8 flyaways are the hardest ones of the season in terms of travel. So yeah, it'll be an interesting experience, but I honestly can't wait for every single one of them. I'm really excited. And yeah, in terms of the content, it'll just be more content of my race day experiences, reviews of the Grand Prix, costs of all the Grand Prix. So like a full explanation of my whole trip, and just trying to take everyone along with me. And hopefully completing the challenge for the £20,000 budget and the 28 days annual leave. So we'll see. But yeah, fingers crossed. It's looking quite good at the moment. So
absolutely brilliant, mate. Maybe the evolution for the 2026 season is that you also do a job share so that you split it 12 races each with somebody else. So keep the budget the same, up with inflation. But then also, just because, as we mentioned earlier, most of the personnel in Formula One outside of the driver also now split their responsibilities. So that is a huge challenge that you have taken on, and we will keep our eye on it. And you guys watching out there as well, please do. So if you don't already follow him, you can see his handle on the screen now at full.time.formula across TikTok, Instagram and YouTube. So give him your support, and then hopefully he's got something great for us for the 2026 season as well. But listen, Brandon, have you enjoyed yourself on the show tonight?
It's been fantastic. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, James. Like I said, it's my first time being on like a live show and a podcast, and I've had a great time. So thanks for the invite. And hopefully in the future I can come back at some point.
Brilliant stuff, bud. Yeah, maybe I'll tap you up for a season review. And once you've had a bit of time to recover, of course, so we'd leave it to the beginning of next year, because you definitely deserve December off, not talking, not traveling anywhere. But you guys out there, thank you so much for joining us on the show this evening, watching live. And if you're watching the recording of this, thank you for supporting the show. Please make sure that you share and like our content, as it really helps it gather momentum and push out there as much as possible. And if that happens, that means I can then get other great guests on like Brandon from the Formula One content creator community. It's been a pleasure to be with you guys this evening. Remember, we've got 3 weekends off now. I'm heading over to California to enjoy myself, and then we will be back after the summer break for the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. But until then, we'll see you. Have a great August, guys. Take care.